Are you ready to see one of the most badass JKs I ever built? Well, here it is, and let's take a closer look. Hey everybody, it's Bubba with X's 4x4, and we build badass Jeeps. And speaking of badass Jeeps, we got one back in the shop this week, and it just so happens it's one of the first JKs that I ever built. And man, is this thing bad. Let's start walking through some of the things that we built that are custom to this Jeep. Well, first, let's point out one of the most obvious things about this Jeep, and that's these flat fenders. When he first approached me with this build, that was actually one of the only things that we were gonna do to this Jeep was build these fenders. We ordered up some Evo Builders corners, bought a tubing bender, some DOM, and we started making some fenders. As you can see, they came out really slick on this thing. I built some for my JK. You guys have seen it. They still don't look as good as these. These are very special. Took a lot of time. In fact, it took so much time that I swore I would never build another one of these again. We actually TIG welded everything on them too. We didn't use a MIG anywhere. So it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, but they really came out beautiful. While they were there, the customer changed his mind. He wanted to make some upgrades. One of the other upgrades you can look down here and see is the Evo manufacturing double throwdown suspension. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Evo double throwdown suspension, it's one of the few suspensions out there that incorporates triple bypass shocks in with the coilovers. In the front, you know, that's not totally unique, but it is a little bit different. You don't see it on a lot of JKs out there, or a lot of JLs, or any other Jeeps for that matter. But Evo really knocked it out of the park with this. Even though this is really cool, it's not what's as special as what's in the back of the Jeep. So let's go back there and peek under. Now, at first glance, you look underneath this Jeep and it starts looking a little bit different. You can tell that there's a ton of ground clearance underneath here. You don't have any shocks hanging down, no bracketry. In fact, you just barely even see these lower control arm mounts underneath here. And that's because this Jeep is running the Evo double throwdown system in the rear of the Jeep as well. And what's super different about that is that it's a cantilever design. And a lot of people don't even know this suspension actually exists, but it's super effective. It offers tons of ground clearance, and it also gives a super comfortable ride off-road. Now, when you're going slow off-road, you don't really notice it so much, but it's one of those deals that as the Jeep starts going faster, you actually start to feel a little bit smoother. That's the design. It works that well. I'll show you in a minute, but you can look up underneath here. You start to see the subframe just right around the top of the diff right here. And that's about as low as the cantilever suspension goes. But you look up in here in the subframe between the frame rails, and you'll see the triple bypass shocks and the coilovers back here, all done on a cantilever design. What's really cool about that is you can put some short shocks in there, and the geometry works so well that, like, out of an 8-inch shock or 8-inch coilover, you're actually getting 14 inches of travel or more. They're limit straps so that we don't overextend and start getting some interference with the subframe and the shocks. But super cool design. It rides really well. One of the only things that I don't like about it, and it's not really their design, it's not their fault, but is the track bar. I'm not a big fan of that. People that know me out there know I love triangulation and getting rid of track bars. If the gas tank, the fuel tank wasn't up there, then you could triangulate it. But because the subframe is here, you don't really have a place to move the fuel tank. So you're kind of stuck with the track bar. Now, in my personal JK, I'm running the exact same suspension. We were actually building that JK so that we could triangulate it and get rid of that track bar. We're running a fuel cell up in the cargo area in the back of the Jeep, but we just never finished it. It's ready. We just never got around to triangulating it. Same system, same design, used it all over the country, and it's worked really well. Awesome suspension. Now, when we built the rear fenders, we also went ahead and added the Evo tire carrier in the back. You're going to see a lot of Evo stuff on this Jeep. It's something that I like to do sometimes when we're building a Jeep that's going to be running a suspension like that. We'll just go ahead and stick with Evo throughout the build for most of it. And that's what happened here. Most of the build incorporated Evo, and we'll show you some more of that in a minute. But the tire carrier, super rugged, super dependable. We've actually seen this Jeep backing down off an obstacle into a wall, and it didn't distort it at all. I mean, and I say a wall, I mean a rock wall. But it took a pretty good hit in the back and didn't affect it at all. Tire carrier still opens and closes just as easy as it always did. Most of the time when we mount these tire carriers, we'll bolt them in. But on this one, we went ahead and welded the brackets in. I don't really know why we did that. Other than we were doing so much welding at the time, and
it just seemed like the thing to do.
I get carried away.
But It's something that you can do. It's an option. It doesn't really add strength or take away strength at all. It's just one of those things where it kind of looked better. One thing that I would probably change, and what I did change on my JK, because I am running the same fenders and armor, I would have changed out this hardware for stainless oxidized bolts that would be black and kind of blend in with the Jeep so you wouldn't notice it. But even then, still, it doesn't look bad on this Jeep. It might be something I would change though. As always, we're running 40-inch Netto trail grapplers on this Jeep, which is why we had this big tire carrier. You need a tire carrier that's rugged, that is rigid, and can hold that kind of weight back here. Running a heavy beadlock and a heavy tire, such as a 40-inch trail grappler, you need that kind of strength. This is a wheel that we haven't seen in a long time. In fact, I think that when we bought these wheels for this build, that was like the last run of them, is the Chamber Pro 2 wheels. It's a really good looking wheel. I wish they hadn't quit making it, because it was actually, it's an awesome wheel. And we had people for a long time asking for those wheels. I just wish they still made it. So one of the things on this Jeep that isn't Evo manufacturing are these rock sliders. Now, these are LOD off-road, very, very rugged, very dependable, very rigid. One thing about the Evo rock sliders is they don't offer that little platform for you to stand on, which was kind of nice about the LODs and why we did this. LOD advertises as a bolt-on slider, which 100% you can do that. In this build, again, we were welding so much stuff anyways, why not weld on the sliders? That's what we did. We got them located by bolting them up with the front cross member bolts, and then we just welded them out. No regrets there. They look good and they work very, very well. Again, something I'm running on my Jeep. This Jeep parallels my JK in a lot of ways. And again, this is one of those ways. Another Evo product, this is the Evo Pro Series bumper. It's made out of 3/16 plate, not 1/4 inch. A little less stuff going on than the 1/4 pounder, so it's a little bit lighter, but it is very sleek, something that goes along with this Jeep very well. I felt like the 1/4 pounder bumper, the owner and I both felt like maybe that was a little bit too rugged for this Jeep. This is a very, very sexy Jeep. So we needed something that would work very well, that was very low profile, and that would just look really good and fit the Jeep build very well. And this bumper pulled it off. And of course, as always, a Warren Xeon 10S sitting in there, super reliable, always the best winch, American made, about as much as the one can be. And then a Factor 55. It's classy, it looks good on this Jeep, right? Moving underneath here, you can't have a Jeep running on 40s built like this without a good set of axles underneath it. And we chose to go along with this build was a Dynatrac Pro Rock 60 package, what they call the hardcore package, running E-lockers with 513 gears. These axles have been super, super reliable since day one. We have never had any issues with them whatsoever. We put one of our anodized tie rods on there. Customer already had, it was like a redneck Ram on here or something like that. The Ram worked for the steering travel that we got out of the Pro Rock 60. So you're not going to see a PSC Ram on it just because we already had a Ram, but we do have a PSC gearbox and a PSC pump running upstairs. Let's take a look inside, because the good looks don't stop on the outside. This customer put in the PRP Enduro Elite set seats, I think that's what they're called, and they look so good in here. It's a black and gray suede, actually. It just fits the build perfect. You're talking about a seat that is more comfortable than the factory seats, than being an aftermarket seat. It doesn't take away any of the comfort, it just adds to it, and it looks so good in here. Let's also switch around a little bit here, and you'll see that it does have a sport cage in it. Again, another Evo manufacturing product in here. This is one of those Evo sport cages that people are always asking me about. Sorry guys, we just can't get them anymore. We did sell a few when they were out, and this is one of the ones that came in. It looks so good in here. I mean, it doesn't stop. I mean, just Jeep, everywhere you look at it, just keeps getting better and better and better. And this is one of those things. Got your grab handles up here, that bar that goes across and kind of connects the frame together inside here. It just blends in so well. It's so low profile.
They really tied the room together.
Unlike any of the other tubular sport cages out there, which kind of stick up and kind of block your view. This one just sort of blends in with the interior. It looks so good in here. I wish they'd bring this cage back. Last but not least, on the interior, we got the Switch Pros in here. That's controlling, you know, the lockers. Looks like he's got some radios and other stuff hooked up to it. But Switch Pros is just a really super reliable switch system for all the Jeep platforms, or, you know, any platform, basically. Anything that has a 12-volt battery in it, you can hook those up to and just connect the world to it. That was a no-brainer. It's set up, the backlighting is set up green to match the interior lights and all that stuff. So it just looks at home in here, and that's super important in a build like this. All right, well, a build like this wouldn't be complete if we didn't do what we do best, and that's add power to the Wrangler.
Let's peek underneath this hood real quick and see what's going on.
This is by far one of the most dependable, reliable LS swaps that I ever built. This was using an RPM Extreme kit. The harness just blended away into the engine. They do a really good job of building their wiring harnesses. It's a 6.2 liter LS aluminum block V8. We originally just put it in there as a L9H configuration. We did add an LS9 cam to it. It's one of the earlier ones that we did. And it just brought that LS to life even more. It could be just a little bit better. I feel like if it had long tube headers, it would sound so much better. It's loud, it's powerful, and it screams. But it doesn't have that deep throaty rumble to it that the long tube headers give you, like my JK. But it does in every other way. It looks really, really good under the hood, and it performs solid. It has tons of power. It's one of those things that I wish I had done to my JK, but I just haven't ever done it, and I don't know that I ever will. But when I drive this Jeep, it really makes me feel like pulling my JK in and throwing one of those LS9 cams in it. However, I got bigger things to do right now than work on my own Jeep. But yeah, he even put the struts on there for the hood, so you know, we don't have the prop anymore. It just opens up and it's nice and slow. It's very dramatic and really makes you appreciate that LS whenever you see it in there. Well, just because we put a bunch of Evo stuff on here, don't get the wrong impression, guys. We're not sponsored by them at all. We just like their product, and the customer liked the product, and we put a lot of it on this Jeep. The other thing I want to add is, just because you see me doing a video on an LS Jeep, don't be calling me asking me to put one in yours. I'm done with it, man. I'm only gonna do the Hemis from now on. This was back in the day, we started doing V8 swaps, and yeah, LS was a good idea. It ran cooler and better than the Hemis did, but you know, nowadays technology's gotten a little bit better, and we like the Hemis because they just seem so much more electronically reliable than the LSs are in these Jeeps. It doesn't mean that I'm anti-LS, just means that I don't really want to put them in Jeeps anymore. As always, for more cool videos about Jeeps and other off-road stuff, click here.